I think actually I was probably only 4 when they gave me a pocket knife which had come from a Chinese shop. It was a squirrel it was really a paper knife. It was a squirrel with a little blade that folded out, and it didn't cut anything, and it was complete waste of time. And I knew that instinctively as a child. And then the following year they actually gave me a pocket knife, and I went and cut a bit of cherry wood, and I was whittling with it, and I cut my finger already. But I was a bit of a a bit of a softie as a child, and I would have gone running to my nurse and said, "Look, I've cut myself." But because this new knife had come, I wrapped a bit of grass around it and didn't tell anybody. You see, I've still got scars on that finger from whittling. I was 8, 9 before I got a pocket knife that worked, and started whittling and making toys for my friends, working out which were the best woods to whittle. So that was before I started carving, and then carving started from the time I got to secondary school. It was built in that I wanted to do that, and I went on sort of right through to the end of the Second World War, making aeroplanes and things for my friends to play with, because toys were very scarce in those days. When I was working at Rokura, I would do an hour's carving before I left for work. I always thought that the Queen got the bigger part of the day, but I got the prime bit at the beginning. But I had 3 grandparents who had all been trained in carving in London, so it was in the family, and I knew it was in my genes. So that's what got me into wood carving. I love doing it. I found a book called In Search of Zarathustra, and this book was about an art group around the Aral Sea in Persia doing artwork, and the Vikings came all the way down the Volga and took the art from these people back to Europe, and the Europeans now call it Celtic art, and this is a case in point. It's a design from Persia, but that same design is found on Viking ships and so on. So that's what's interesting about this particular design. So it's from a stave church a copy of a stave church carving in Norway, at a place called Ørns in Norway, and it's really rather fascinating. There's a horse here, and that's a horse, but the tip of the nose of the horse is twisted like this. It's horses and vines. And then if you look carefully, you can see that this horse is biting the neck of another horse, and that's the underneath of the jaw of another horse. And there's another jaw of another horse here, and another one there, and another one there. And their legs end in vines. So it's a mixture of horses and vines all the way through. And these designs came into the early Christian art of Ireland, and they think because the Maori art came through Taiwan, because we think the DNA of the Maoris is Taiwanese, the thing is that those same designs have influenced the whole of the Pacific. So these twirls and curlicues you get in Maori carving are from that same 2,000 years before Christ, the artist group in the Aral Sea. Fascinating subject. Just quickly, I'll show you something. This is some of my grandfather's silver work. This one, he didn't finish it. He was too old and too incapable. And so my mother gave me the bits, and I brought it here, and I got a silversmith in Hamilton to put it together for me. It was in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces when I brought it to New Zealand. So it hasn't got a hallmark on it, only just his initials. This is a cigarette box. I was there when he gave that to my mother. It was made for her she used to buy cigarettes in tins, and they sat in there, and it's got the hallmark on it. And what he used to do was he did his silversmithing in Guernsey, but there's no hallmarks in Guernsey, so he smuggled them back to the Silversmiths Guild in London and had them hallmarked in London, and then smuggled them back to Guernsey again, you see. And he gave this to my mother, and I was there when he presented it to her, and so I heard the whole story. He took this to London, and the stupid fool at the Silversmiths Guild put the hallmark on the inside there and smashed the stone, which is such a pity, because it's a lovely moss agate, but he cracked it, you see. But I mean, I heard that story because I was there when my grandfather gave it to my mother. And it's a lovely thing, you see. That's a copper bowl he made, because it's an experiment. You know, it's a flat sheet of copper, and he beats it to get it to that shape. And this is an experiment, I think, testing to learn how to do the silverwork. Initially, when you start a carving, you don't know that it's going to be successful, but there's a certain point where you can see that it's coming to be what you want it to be, and then it's a thrill, and the rest of it, the finishing, is just such fun. That's the tray of chisels that I use. You know how when you drive to work every day along the same route, sometimes you can be thinking about something else. Your subconscious mind is doing the driving. And when you arrive at work, you don't remember having driven because you've done it so automatically. And so some part of your brain that's been thinking about something else. You're using two levels of consciousness. And that's a very wonderful thing. And when you're wood carving, I can be listening to music and I reach for the next tool. My subconscious knows which tool I want for the job I'm doing in hand. And when you finish carving, even if it's for an hour or 2 hours, you come out much more relaxed because you've used part of your brain that doesn't always get used. And it gives you that feeling of total relaxation. And it's partly the designs that get you so thrilled, you know? It's and the designs are about humanity, you know. That's the thing. I mean, I make these fetus carvings and these Earth Mother carvings. They're so important, I think. When we did that big carving for the City Council building, Dick James stuck all the bits of wood together. I did the design for the thing, and it's 7 meters long, it's 7 panels, and the tallest panel is 2 meters tall, and the river runs through it, and it's all about things that go on in Hamilton. Well, Dick did most of the work, and Paddy James said to me, oh, well, he said, Hugh, he said, I used to ask my father what the different members of the club did. And I said to him one day, what does Hugh Oliver do? Ah, said Dick, he does arty things. I was so thrilled. That was that was long after he died. It was such a lovely compliment to pass on. I mean, Dick himself was a natural artist. He was a cabinet maker, in fact. And one of our friends, I mean, Meg is in her mid-90s now. She's still carving. And in her rooms in the old folks' home, she's got 2 beautiful Welsh dresses that were made by Dick James. And she's got all her carvings in the glass-fronted Welsh dresses. So, you know, it's really a monument to all the people who worked in that club. So many different woods, and that's what's so fascinating. Elm is a lovely wood, and often you find furniture made in it. It's a lovely wood, and they make spinning wheels and things in elm. But this is a wood from Ruakura. This tree only grows in Japan and in the Caucasus. It's called Zelkova, and it belongs to the elm family, the the Almacy, but this is much harder and polishes much better than elm. So it just shows you it's a matter of knowing and being lucky that I worked at Ruakura, so I learned about the trees that are there. This is a wood called Gristolinia. It's a native New Zealand. Puka's the Maori name for it. It grows as an epiphyte in the trees, and the birds seed it into the big masses of epiphytes up in the tree, and it sends a root all the way down to the soil and becomes a tree. And this stuff is so hard that I've tried to dry it in lumps, and it just delaminates because it splits, because the water won't go out of it well enough. But what I did with this one was I cut it green, and while it was still wet, I sawed out the shape there, and it's thin enough for it to lose moisture evenly, so it was perfectly all right. Oh yes, there are bits of unfinished wood or broken bits in the basement, which I keep under wraps pretty much. But sometimes you don't get the wood quite right, and it snaps, you know. But on the whole, it's I'm just lucky. Fun question you ask. It's a very sensible question. I did a drawing for that carving in my diary. I've got more than 50 diaries there. I keep a diary every day, and I did a drawing for that carving. I left it upstairs and I went down and did the carving and came back up. The drawing was entirely different from the carving in the end. So it just shows you that, in fact, I'm lucky. It's because of this artistic bent in our family that it's in my blood to do designs, you know. I'm just so lucky. When I was a child, we had kitchen tables covered in what was called oilcloth, and it was just made with linseed oil. It was the long chain molecules of linseed dry. It's a drying oil, so they dry into a sort of plastic, and so really linseed oil was one of the earliest plastics. And what you're doing is, if you oil the wood with raw linseed oil, I prefer raw. Danish oil is just a mixture of tung oil and linseed oil. The thing is, if you have raw linseed and you put it on, and you can put wax on and then put more linseed on later. I often, when I've just oiled a new carving, I often go to an old one. So what you're doing is the outer layer of wood becomes a sort of plastic, really, and it takes a lovely polish. But then again, the waxes we use, I mean beeswax obviously, but beeswax is fairly low melting point, and it's good, but if you have a wax with a little bit of carnauba wax, it is the hardest wax known to man with the highest melting point, and they put a tiny bit of carnauba wax in car polishes and things just to give it that hardness. So I've had a stick of carnauba, and you can put it onto to a turnery as you're doing it. So it's a matter of knowing the stuff, isn't it? It's, you know, reading about it and learning what's made of. But just recently, I've got this engineer friend across the valley here, and he's just shown me how to use a big mop turning very fast with a bit of wax. You put the wax on it, and the finish you get on a carving can be much quicker that way, you know. You just got to push it into a mop. But you know, it's, you know, I just love the lines you get if you oh, wood carving is such fun, I tell you. Here, this is a piece of teak. Now, I don't have teak, but one of my wood carving mates in the wood carving club, I told him I'd never carved teak, and he gave me this piece of teak, and I looked at it and I thought, well, what am I going to carve with this? And I noticed there's a lovely ripple in the grain here. So it'd be a shame to carve anything that didn't show off that ripple. So I found this big fossil and I copied the fossil, and you can still see that ripple in it. So you try to make a design that's going to show the wood off to its best advantage. These dancing girls, this is Ligustrum lucidum, which is the big leafed privet. And people don't like it because it upsets the asthmatics, but it's related to the olive family. It belongs to the Oleaceae, the olive family, and it's a lovely, lovely wood. And it's lovely for making rolling pins and kitchen utensils and so on. Here I carved two dancing girls, and you can see their skirts are whirling round a bit, trying to put a bit of movement into the sculpture. You see? When I carved it, and because the wood was a bit rough, you can see the pith in the walnut here, I just finished it with chisel like that. But it's really rather nice. That's like clothing and her hair. And I'm quite proud of the design. You see, she's a very full-buttocked lady with her hands in her hair, so you don't have to carve her hands. But it's a nice figure. And I think the thing is that I'm so lucky to have this gift that I can go straight into a bit of wood without drawing, and I think about what I'm carving, you know, and so that's a case in point. This is these two bits of fossil rata, really, and the sound of the wood tells you that it's more or less like glass. It's so hard, and to carve something out of a piece of rata like that is such a delight, and the rata had been down in the bog and all the soft sort of rotted away. So these stretch marks on her belly are natural to the wood, and you don't have to fake anything. It looks real, you know. I'm just so thrilled when the wood tells you what to carve out of it, you know. One of the woodworkers from the club, Bill King, we used to talk wood together. Quite often I'd ring him up twice a week and talk wood with him because he's really keen on wood and he was interested in trees. So we could chatter away like anything. But anyway, Bill King had a friend who lived on the Taupo Napier Road somewhere with a workshop. And he gave me this bit of wood and it was covered in grease to stop it splitting. And he gave it to me, and I could tell it was a hardwood because it was heavy, and I thought it was probably a bit of eucalyptus or something like that. I never really looked, but it sat on my bench for about a year, 18 months or something, and then I cleaned it up a little bit and had a look. It's African mahogany, and it's absolutely delightful. If you get the sunlight on it, you can see it, the light goes right into the wood. When you do a design in wood, you don't want to leave sticky out bits that are going to break off. You want to keep something entire, you know. The beauty of it is, you see, it's all in one piece, and it's got all the details there, but it makes the best use of the bit of wood as well. So that's what I look for in a design, is something that's, you could drop this on the floor and it's unlikely it'll break. I mean, this is a case in point, this Purukawa mother and child, or you could call it Madonna and child. I did wrong here. I left the gown like this, and when it's fallen, it has actually broken. And I'm quite proud to leave the break there because it shows that I was naughty. My design wasn't good enough, you know. But on the whole, I'm proud of that, and I'd really like to join a pottery class and make copies of that in pottery because they'd make nice mother and child. A nice piece of Purukawa from, as I say, from Trevor James's father's farm. I've done a whole series of these, but I think this first one was probably the best one. It's called Contemplation. It's just a figure. This is Purukawa, and I dug the Purukawa up on the beach at Oputari. It had been underground, and a lot of it had teredo worms in it, so it had holes in it. But that's just a nice one, and I've done a whole series the same, and people have twisted my arm and paid me for them or not, you know, a whole series of this particular figure. But I mean, by keeping it, it's inspired me to do more, you know, and that's the advantage. That's why I've got so many things here. I haven't had to sell them. People have got my carvings around the world, people who really enjoy them, but on the whole, I've kept as much as I can because it inspires me to do more. My kids call this the flasher, this carving. You see, it's a man with a large thing. And the thing is, my mother came to visit for 10 weeks in 1968-9. She was here for Christmas and didn't leave till March. And it was a 2-bedroom house at that time. And my wife and I had the 2 kids in the bedroom, so my mother could have the spare bedroom. And she loved her holiday. She had a marvellous time. But there was one guy that wasn't too pleased because sex was off rations for the whole 10 weeks, and so that...
You had to express yourself in other ways.
Exactly. Very, very well put. I would like to think that if we encourage youngsters, but anybody to make things and to carve things, it makes them look at the world around them with new eyes. You've got to be very patient because carving is slow compared with turnery. It's a real joy when you achieve something. I taught art in 2 winters in Hamilton for secondary school kids. I was with the Waikato Society of Arts, and at that time the teachers in the secondary schools in Hamilton all were trying to make their students into clones of themselves, so teaching them the sort of art that they did, whereas I just gave these kids paper and pencils and paint and told them to get on with it and chatter and enjoy they even brought music along. They enjoyed themselves so much that after 3 sessions they started bringing their friends along, and the friends said to me, "Oh, Mr. Oliver, I can't draw for nuts, I'm hopeless, don't worry." The thing is, people put other people down and say you'll never be an artist. I said, look, just here's a bit of paper, here's a pencil, you just scribble for a bit and talk to your friends. I'll come back in 20 minutes and see how you've got on. And then I tell them to enlarge onto another piece of paper a part of what they'd scribbled. And as soon as they started to achieve something, they became artists. And that's true of just about anybody. I could take anybody and get them to enjoy doing an art form, you know. And I really believe that, and it's so important. That's what the fun thing is just to keep at it, and the more you do, the more you learn.